What's up? I'm Dan Fradenburgh, and this is not a chance encounter. I'm joined today with Frank Patalano. How you doing today, Frank?
Very good, sir. I love your jokes as usual.
Awesome, awesome. So, just to get you all caught up on what's going on, I usually have my chance encounters, but chance encounters are when I first met somebody, or I don't really know what's going on, or I'm just documenting the relationship in case they have a private deal that they want to share with me and protect themselves from accusations of public solicitation without a prior substantive relationship. Blah, 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 blah. So, I have these not a chance encounters afterwards for people who are, they're going to be a bigger part of my business, or I just want to really give them a little bit more spotlight or something like that. But before we get into your business, particularly Frank, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
So, Frank Patalano, formerly a school teacher, started to invest in real estate just about a decade ago. Bought a little bit every year, and now I left my regular job and I'm able to buy stuff in many parts of the United States and even other countries sometimes. And I also do some other different cool entrepreneurial things. I try to be like Dan in real life.
Exactly. There you go. Good stuff. That's awesome. So the first section that I go through in each of the chance encounters are the five distinct motivations. But before I hit that, I have to say, but wait, check your hate. And so, Frank, I don't know if you can imagine that the camera is a clock, but at the 8 o'clock down here, the audience, if you can see through the camera, you might see if they have a hideous red subscribe button, or if they've already hit it and it's the great. Can you see if the? No, it's just a stupid joke I do on all of these before I get going, just to remind people. But the five distinct motivations. What I've really found as I got to know this industry, everybody has their own reasons, but I found that if I categorize the motivation in these five different ways, then it tells me why somebody's going to go through with their next commercial deal, because it can take months. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong, and it can wind up being very expensive. So the five motivations real quick. One of them is preservation of purchasing power. And what that means is if you already have a portfolio of assets and that is how you make ends meet, sometimes you're going to make a new acquisition because inflation is wearing away at your purchasing power. Or if there's an asset crash, you might end up making more acquisitions because you're buying at a discount. That's not what I'm up to right now. What I'm up to is, because I've got a background in CRM technology, specifically the kind that take credit cards. So it's more than just your active campaign and MailChimp and things like that. But I've been doing that since 2010, my agency since 2011. But the problem is that when you're making a bunch of money in the form of salary or wage, you're paying more in tax than anybody else. So it hit me, how can I pivot where I'm getting rewarded in the form of deployed capital, aka equity, instead of paying half of it to tax? So that's what I'm up to. Some people, though, they're attracted to commercial real estate because they want to take control of their schedule. So that might mean working fewer months per year, or it might mean retiring early. But that's different from the people who are doing this out of ambition. If you want to make sure that you have that generational wealth, you want to make sure that your great grandchildren never have to hold a day job, then that is why some people are making these acquisitions, and they're great because they're going to be hustling into their 90s, unlike the people who are fast tracking retirement. But there's one last group, which is that they're hustling because they've already found a sector of society, or maybe it's the environment or animals or something like that, and they want to make a big difference. And that's why they're making these new acquisitions. So of those five different motivations, Frank, what combination of those would you say describes you best?
If I had to pick two, I guess the biggest one I have is worrying about inflation and also the retirement. But when we say retirement, just being able to plan your life as you see fit.
I love it.
I haven't had a W two for a little while now, and I don't plan on ever going back. So those are the main two. I mean, at the same point, one that I'm not sure if you have in one of those categories is the concept of the art of the deal. Like, you enjoy real estate and investing and negotiating and everything else so much that it's just like a fun project and it's fun
Mhm.
times.
I love that. That's very insightful. Yeah, you're right. That didn't cross my mind, but yeah, that makes lots of sense. But on that subject, actually, the other question I always ask, you're aware of the questionnaire that they often give out for 506B raises. And one of the questions that I really didn't like in it is, how much risk do you like? I don't think it really says enough about your perception of the risks involved in commercial real estate. So I need to make sure that my guest has some sort of concept of that. The way I do that is this fill in the blank question. So Frank, for you, I'm going to get one that's related to real estate and one that's not. The fill in the blank is there are many popular investment asset classes, but I think blank is too risky. So can you give me one investment class that is not real estate that's too risky and one that is real estate that's too risky for you?
So, non-real estate, I'm going to joke and say the word bonds,
Mm-hmm.
only because the return on them is so low compared to what inflation's been lately
Mm-hmm.
that it's kind of risky to do that, or even putting money into a bank account, et cetera. Obviously, you need reserves. Obviously, you need money on hand, but you're not getting any kind of return on those types of asset classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the real estate related space, um, I don't necessarily have an answer for that, but I would say that for me, I haven't touched gas stations
Mm-hmm.
in industrial just because of the environmental risk. That's a little risky for me, but if you have the knowledge, then it might not be risky at all for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that answer. Yeah, makes lots of sense. All right, cool. So then the next questions, I'm going to throw in these right here before we get into the roles. One of them is, I actually already know that you're an accredited investor. So are you an accredited investor, Frank?
Yes, I am, sir. I've been able to be one since about 2013.
Excellent, excellent. And so then the next question, and this one, it's kind of a tricky one, and I can lay my cards out on the table for you. It's to see what it would take for you to quit or what it's really going to look like. And the way that I frame that one is if you were to win $100 million, okay, I know that that's enough where it would change. Maybe winning $1 million wouldn't change your lifestyle that much. But if it was 100 million, that would change. So what kind of changes do you think you'd make? I think especially from an investment standpoint, if you had an inflow of 100 mil.
So I'd love to talk about some of the non-investment standpoint first.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my wife is very conservative with money, and she is still working because she still has this fear with insurance, not life insurance, health insurance, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I would definitely have her retire from her job.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important one for me. On the investing side, I would still be doing investments, but I might be looking in different markets and going a little bigger on the properties themselves. So,
Mm-hmm.
we recently did a deal where we bought 88 units,
Mm-hmm.
and or actually, we had another deal that we did 79 units and 72 units. That sub 100. While I like the space, that's only because I'm not ready necessarily to go after that 225 unit
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So I would go a little bigger, and because of that too, I could also try a couple more markets.
I love it. I love it. So let's get into the deals themselves. One thing I do in every episode of Chance Encounters and Not Chance Encounters is I go through the Dan Does Deals Commercial Competency Cube with the 6 main roles in a commercial deal. And if you want your own copy, it's completely free. You go to dandoesdeals.com. I don't even ask for your email address, which is a really, really, really bad idea. You should always ask for contact information in return for your freebie. But I want to make sure that you can effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate. So I go through all 6 sides every single time. I'm going to be a little bit faster on this one though, because it's not a chance encounter. So repositioners is the first role I want to talk to. That's an acquisitions person. They're looking at a bunch of different properties. They should be able to underwrite the property, which means do the math. They need to be able to figure out, is this seller / broker telling the truth about how much this property is making? And a lot of people just call repositioners investors. I call them repositioners because they have to be able to figure out how are they going to change this property to find more upside. Now, maybe the actual changes isn't something that's really in their wheelhouse, and maybe they do. Every repositioner has some investor relations or financier relations roles. So what they're doing when they're talking to financiers being people who only deal with paper and money, is if the repositioner can find more advantageous lending, that goes straight to the bottom line. Okay, so it's profit, okay, just by getting a cheaper loan. So that's one spot that they're going to look to find that upside. But usually a repositioner is going to figure out from an operations perspective what changes, like what additional amenities can you add where the property is actually making more money. But of course, most people think of properties operations in terms of unclogging toilets and collecting rent and mowing lawns, and that's all important as well. But if you're going to be a general partner on one of these deals, you have to have some asset management roles. So that's going to be something that some people contribute to, but in bigger deals, you're going to outsource it as well. So operations is one place where the team is going to be looking to cut costs, and that's more upside as well. But because commercial real estate is so competitive, frequently that's not going to be enough. So they're going to get a contractor team in to do renovations or a value add. The purpose then is so that the next tenant will be happy to pay more in rent than the previous one, and that is upside. But if you're like me and you have the problem of being from the internet, you're going to need locals. You're going to need someone who lives nearby the property who can be there in an hour or two, because that's not going to be me. I'd be stuck at an airport. But if you have this team and then you turn around to the financier and say, hey, I want to buy this property. It's hundreds of units and tens of millions of dollars. Do you happen to have, say, tens of millions of dollars you want to lend us? Well, the financier is going to have one big burning question in their mind that I haven't addressed yet, which is, who's your sponsor? If you want to be eligible for a commercial loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a similar asset, okay? And then the KP part, sometimes that has to do with the balance sheet, because among these owners, you have to have a balance sheet of at least the amount of the loan, and you also have to generate a certain amount of liquidity to be eligible. But if you have all those pieces, you've got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So Frank, I know that you do have some deal finding roles. You also bring your balance sheet to a lot of your deals. But how would you describe your core competencies that you generally are going to contribute?
My core competencies, number one, definitely sponsor slash KP. I usually sign the note for a deal. I usually bring my balance sheet in one way or another. I would say a little bit of the financier side, only from raising capital from a network perspective. One of the things I don't see on your die is that networker role, which I think is very important. And all of them have a little bit. And that repositioner, while I don't necessarily like underwriting, based on the experience I have, I definitely take a lot of look at other people's underwriting, and my goal is to find the holes in their assumptions, or at least find the holes in the deal, so that I can just move on and start working on the next deal.
I love it. I love it. And as far as killing deals and saying yes to deals, the next question has to do with buy box. And when commercial syndicators or investors are talking to each other saying, hey, what exactly are you looking for? What's easy to say yes to? What's more difficult to say no to? They really talk about three main things. First one's geography, which states, okay, which counties, possibly even which neighborhood, okay, that's going to be the first thing. Second thing is going to be size. We're talking about multifamily here, and I know that Frank, you're not totally married to multifamily as long as the deal works and it's something that you understand. But when you're talking about multifamily, you usually go by unit count. And the reason why that's important is because generally you have different types of teams who are taking over, say, 15 unit apartment complexes from 350 unit apartment complexes. It's a totally different deal. So the size definitely matters on that one. Now, the third one, you could call it class. I separate it into two separate words, so I'm not using the same word for two different things. First one's condition. So that has to do with how old is the building, and is it, like beat up, or is it, in reasonably good shape? Is it filled with wonderful luxuries and amenities, or is it really, really bare bones? Okay, that's one definition of class or condition. The second one, it has to do with the area is the better term to use as far as I'm concerned. And you're talking about what's the crime rate like where the property is located? What are the school districts like where the property is located? How close is it to an interstate? Okay. So those are the two different meanings of class, and both of them they're rated with the same system as in grade school, where you got A plus at the top, and then A, and then A minus, and then B plus, and so on. So Frank, as far as I believe you go more for meat on the bone than those specific ranges, but what's easier for you to say yes to, and more difficult to say no to?
Sure. And I'll start out by saying that I've been an LP on about a dozen deals, a limited partner, a passive investor, besides the fact that I'm also a GP on a number of deals as well. With that being said, what do I like for location? I try to stay away from some of the heavily regulated states. I don't plan on investing right now in California or New York. At the same point, I've invested in deals from Idaho to New Hampshire, from South Carolina to New Mexico. So I'm over the map with that. Obviously, the less snow removal I have to deal with, the better. In regards to markets, I would say that as of this moment, and I wouldn't say it wouldn't change, the real estate market's been very hot. And even though we've had a little bit of cooling lately, I try to avoid those hottest of hot markets. So it's rare for me to be looking at deals in Atlanta or Phoenix or Houston or Dallas. That doesn't mean I won't pull one down, but it has to do with the number of people that are looking there. If you have 4,000 people looking at 12 buildings, I mean, if I get the best deal, or if I get told that I'm the winning bidder, either I made some real bad assumptions in underwriting or I won the lottery. So yeah, so I tend to do more secondary markets, tertiary markets, but there are surprises sometimes. I mean, some people consider Charleston, South Carolina, a very hot market, and I had a few friends that brought me in for an off-market deal that we closed last year, and it was, even they call it a unicorn because they're local, so it's their own backyard, so they're very proud of it. It's an A neighborhood. I don't typically go after A neighborhoods, but if the numbers work, I'll go after it. So back to neighborhoods and submarkets. I like the B submarkets. I've invested in C, I've invested in A, but B is typically what I'm looking for. In regards to condition, I don't want a heavy lift. Value add is pretty typical, mostly multifamilies. I have bought everything from basically a borderline D condition to some that are almost turnkey. But typically, I like that C condition, that high C where you can convert it to a B. You know, something that needs some work, like you said, meat on the bone, and go from there. Something that you're doing $5,000 or $15,000 of average rehab per door. You know, we're not doing full rehabs. We're not doing tear downs. As a GP, I mean, I've invested as an LP in new construction in quite a few markets, but the main thing with that is no cash flow early on. And then in regards to the number of doors, my typical buy box is 50 to 150. I have bought and been a GP on larger. I have not been a GP on smaller, but I have done JVs on smaller. I still own a duplex about 20 minutes from my house, stuff like that. But the reason why I like that 50 to 150, I tend to go after the ones just below 100 because a lot of people think that 100's that main cutoff for true property management. And we've been successful pulling off a few that are sub that and still have property management. And yeah, I think I hit all the factors of what you were asking for a buy box.
Exactly. That's good stuff. So the next one has to do with people for to reach out. And my favorite thing about commercial real estate is because it's multifaceted and nobody's going to be all the sides of the die for any meaningful amount of time. We're all very eager to make new referrals, to build new teams and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, our skill sets being unique, we're going to be better suited to help some people more than others. So me personally, I've generally been going for sponsors and KPs because they've got the infrastructure, the foundation where a guy with my CRM and automation and marketing background can really make a big difference. but like I find that I'm looking for locals more and more often these days. But Frank, if you have any 506B deals going on, you're not supposed to entice investors. If you have any donuts or something on your desk, please don't raise them in front of the camera or something like that. That's very enticing. But I know you can say, okay, for beginners, if you have 506C deals going on, then you can do whatever you want. But who might be in the audience who's really great to reach out to you, Frank?
Yeah, so since I focus on that KP sponsor and what's most important for me is local and also repositioners. So people that are underwriting deals specifically that they're boots on the ground in their local market. Those are the people that I work with the most. And I mean, with that being said, I tend to merge into other groups and work on other teams. So I joke that I have a New Mexico team, I have a Texas team, I have a South Carolina team, stuff like that. And I'm working with all of them. So
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I very rarely see somebody as eager to meet anybody new, like anybody who you haven't met as you in this industry. So he's a great person to reach out to. And as far as reaching out goes, for me personally, I'm easy to get a hold of because I got the distinct last name right there. If you use your phone to scan this QR code, that goes to the FAQs page of 506BME right there. And that is the platform I use and offer to help people with their compliance documentation, which is really super important. If you're going to be doing private deals, you have to have your relationships documented so that if the SEC audits you, they're going to want to see that relationship. But Frank, what are the best ways to reach out to you?
So, I mean, not only for those people that are local boots on the ground, but also for people that want to do passive investing. Obviously, I'm always looking for new investors to talk to and build relationships with. I have a lot of different social media. So, obviously, I have a podcast called The Cash Flow Kings. Frank Patalano. I'm all over Facebook and Instagram, and we have our TikTok reserved and everything else. So, we have a link tree for the Cash Flow Kings, and that's my main moniker that I use. I mean, we have a bunch of other businesses, but that's the main one that I branch everything else off of.
Exactly. And your email address is right there on your screen, unless you want
Yeah,
me.
in case they're just watching it, in case you're just listening, it's Frank at ribuy.com. RI like Rhode Island, where I live, and buy because I like to buy real estate.
There you go. Great. And so then the last thing, it's actually not for you, Frank, it's for you in the audience. It's a public service announcement, which is if you have been watching these YouTube videos and have been experiencing searing pains in your eyeballs and like migraine-like symptoms, it's probably because there's a hideous red button that says subscribe under my hand down here. And it's free to get rid of that awful button. You just click on it and you should see it. It turns into the gray button of tranquility, and it has a magical power, which means that YouTube might actually start paying for these videos instead of me. And that's why I'm asking. But as far as you're concerned, it just means my videos might show up on your list of suggestions. You can feel free to ignore those suggestions. I just appreciate the fact that you spent this time with me today. Just like Frank, it's great talking to you again, and I'm glad to share you with everybody in the audience.
Thank you, sir. And I am one of your loyal followers anyway, so it makes it easy.
Awesome. Thanks. Make sure you 506B me. Any syndicators, make sure you 506B me.
Hi.
Oh, hey, yeah, here's my code. You got your QR code scanner? Okay. Yeah, oh, yeah, just hold it right in the square there. Okay, cool. And now you hit open in browser.
Okay.
Okay. Are you already logged into 506B me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so there's my video. So now I'm already on your watch list. So when you get back to your hotel, you can find out what my core competencies are and my level of sophistication. Sound good?
Yeah.
I love your hat. Real estate's a scam. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
506B me, everybody.